Hello everyone, this is 22 and today we will be going over the ins and outs of Movement and Viscous' ultimate ability, Goo Ball. It is the single most requested topic in all of my video comments, so I'm excited to explain everything from the basics to the most complicated concepts. Starting out with the basics, using Goo Ball turns the player into a large ball of goo. There you are able to roll around and stun anyone that you run into. The direction of the ball can be controlled using your movement keys or simply by looking in the direction you want to travel and holding W. Viscous has the ability to jump or double jump in ball form, but interestingly this does not consume any stamina. Jumping in ball form is also treated differently than normal jumps, and this is actually one major pain point that we will help you avoid entirely when we go over the active items later in this video. It is also important to note that Viscous is not able to use abilities while in Goo Ball form by default, but is able to do so once Goo Ball is upgraded to the max level. The last basic concept to introduce is the accelerate function, and this is admittedly a bit tricky. Pressing M1 in Goo Ball will turn you into the green flash and increase your speed dramatically, but effective use of this mechanic is crucial to getting value out of the ultimate. Now let's expand just a bit on acceleration as we move on to more specific sections of this guide. Being able to accelerate is great, but as with anything in the real world, speed is directly related to turn radius, so it is not actually wise to hold acceleration down when trying to make small turns or adjustments. Here, I am moving in a circle around this car without accelerating, and here is me attempting that same circle with acceleration held down. You can see the difference in my turn radius is drastic. This concept is simple to explain and easy to understand, but it will take some time to get used to in game. Practice toggling your acceleration when taking corners or when closing the distance on an opponent that may try to dodge your path, and soon this function will become second nature. Controlling the Goo Ball is easy enough when we're aiming at Infernus in the sandbox, but our goal is to collide with people who are zigging and zagging all around the map of Deadlock. Doing this will often require us to change our direction. Small directional turns can usually be handled with a simple turn, but for anything above 90 degrees, it is often best to go for a rebound. Bouncing off of a wall is certainly the quickest way to turn around, and there is a lot of map geometry that can help us accomplish this. These signs, these barrels, all of these walls, suddenly all of these things are components of Viscous' kit for securing stuns and eliminations in ball form. Rebounding is consistently the strongest way to chain hits together onto a single target, and this is a good time to sneak in one non-movement item into the discussion, that being duration extender or superior duration. Goo Ballers that previously watched my Ball Maxer build video know that we love superior duration for increasing the amount of time we are able to spend in our ultimate. But critically important is that this ability also increases the amount of time that our opponents are stunned for. Goo Ball stun just got hit with a hefty nerf, so while the increase in stun duration that comes from this item won't directly impact your movement, it will absolutely reward your good movement in-game by enabling you to chain more stuns together onto your opponents, thanks to this increased stun duration. In basketball, there is a fundamental concept of the triple threat. This is a case where a player is in a viable position to pass the ball, dribble the ball, or shoot the ball. The strength of this position comes from the uncertainty of their next move. The very fact that the player has so many options is where the power comes from. In Goo Ball, being one jump in the air is the equivalent position. So long as timed correctly, there's no downside of being in this position, as your target is not able to run underneath you without getting hit, and from this position, you have the power to jump for a second time, down dash, or make small adjustments to the left or to the right. This is a great way to deter opponents from attempting to jump over you in Goo Ball form. This section also seems like the best place to discuss the concept of juking, or if you'd like to continue on the analogy of basketball, ankle breaking. And it incorporates that tricky acceleration mechanic we discussed previously. See, it is very common for you to be head-to-head against your opponent as you barrel towards them hoping to find the collision. And the only thing your opponent is thinking about is how they are going to avoid getting hit by your big gooey self. The trick to winning these situations is to bait them into dodging a particular direction and then turning that way at the last moment. This is not a situation where you can rely on your reaction time to make the correct move, but instead you are proactively making the cut to the direction you have baited your opponents towards. Notice the position of my crosshair in this clip. I am moving to the right of this player and holding down accelerate as I close the distance. But just as I get into heavy melee range, I'm going to let off accelerate and slow myself down to lower my turn radius and then make a sharp cut to the left. I'm not reacting to this Invernish's dash in this clip. Trust me, I'm far too old to rely on such a skill. Instead, I am proactively moving in that direction because I have baited my opponents to make this move. Down dashing is a mechanic in Deadlock that swiftly charges the player downward from the air. This can be done by double-clicking your crouch button, and just like using normal horizontal dashes or double jumps, it will require 1 stamina. Strangely, down dashing is not possible in goo ball form until you have fully upgraded the ability, but it is worth noting that it is possible at that point. Down dashing has led to some additional hits for me, and it can allow you to recover if you miss a collision you were aiming for in the air, so it is definitely worth putting in your GUI tool bag. The first thing to understand about using your puddle punches is that being punched in the same direction as your current momentum is going to result in launching you a further distance. Punching up while falling onto the ground moves me up some distance, but being punched as I am jumping upwards results in a significantly higher distance. This is of course still the case in ball form. A vertical punch combined with a well-timed jump can result in incredible distance while in goo ball, and punching yourself off of a wall can be a good way to get back into the fight after you engage with a roll through. One of my favorite ways to use Puddle Punch is actually to hit enemies into my direct path or into a position where I can more easily hit them with goo ball. This can be difficult and will require practicing and failing before it can be used effectively in game, but this is a technique that can be incredibly effective at securing additional collisions in goo ball. My last note for Puddle Punch is on a tech that I have not seen any other gooer use, which is what I call the elevator punch. Place your Puddle Punch sideways and pointed towards you about 1.5 goo ball heights on the wall, then jump into the upper middle of the hitbox area. Just before the punch comes into contact with you, use your second jump to get a big vertical boost up the wall. This is most useful for chasing down opponents who are trying to run away from you using the ropes around the map, but can also be a great escape tool. Notice that you are punching against your momentum, which goes against the fundamental rule of puddle punching. But that is because we are not looking to get the maximum horizontal distance, but instead we are looking to convert that into vertical distance. Lastly, I am aware that you can achieve similar results with a vertical puddle punch, but the elevator punch, when done correctly, almost entirely stops your horizontal speed and allows for very sharp corrections at the top of your arch. This is certainly situational, but if you spend some time practicing this in Sandbox, I think you'll be surprised at how often you're able to pull this out in game. Do you want to make your opponent experience this?
Ready to take aim?
Unfortunately, Ethereal Shift has just been reworked to make that interaction in the previous clip impossible, but there are still 4 awesome active items that guarantee to get your goo guide going. Active items are critical to good goo ball movement. At worst, they make up for some errors that you make, but at most, they increase the skill ceiling to goo ball movement drastically. Warpstone is certainly the most common pickup here, as it has great impact both in and out of goo ball. When using Warpstone to get additional collisions on the opposition, I suggest jumping or double jumping into the air and aiming at your victim's feet. You can do this just as well without jumping, but jumping is going to make aiming your Warpstone much easier. Warpstone has a lot of versatility, and it is definitely worth picking up and getting comfortable with. Phantom Strike is the single easiest way to see a dramatic increase in the number of collisions and chase downs you're able to pull off in Ultimate. This ability teleports you directly near an opponent, but notably does not always lead to a collision with your target. 9 times out of 10, you'll be able to press forward just a bit and get that first hit. Plus, Phantom Strike does a bit of damage to the opponent on its own, which is a nice little bonus. In my opinion, there is no better active item for Goo Ball than Phantom Strike, but it definitely has an expensive price tag at 6,200 souls. I have one very important tip that applies to both Warpstone and Phantom Strike, and that is that they should rarely be used to land your first Goo Ball collision. It is much better to rely on your pre-fight positioning to lead to you landing your first hit, and one tip for that may be to engage into the fight from an off angle that the enemy team is less likely to see coming. Saving these actives beyond your first collision allows you to first rely on your fundamentals to get additional hits. You may engage and find yourself in a great location to rebound 2 or 3 hits together. Or you may engage to find yourself going the wrong direction with no redirect options in sight. Warpstone and Phantom Strike will save you in the latter scenario. There are definitely fights where you may need to use these items to land a hit on a particularly evasive target, but having Warpstone or Phantom Strike to put you back into the fight after your first 1 to 2 hits will greatly increase your uptime and start to make Goo Ball movement feel a heck of a lot more rewarding. Majestic Leap can be considered a bit of a loose fit for this list, as you're not able to use it within 5 seconds of taking damage, but it is a great tool for engaging with Goo Ball and has an incredible amount of impact outside of the ultimate. Majestic Leap can consistently be used to put yourself into the fight, snipe targets out of the air, or smack opponents down to the ground. When it comes time to buy my first tier 3 item in game, there is no item that tempts me more than Majestic Leap. Finally, if you have always wanted to enroll in the Air Force Division here in the Goo Ball military, then all you'll need to do is purchase Magic Carpet. At 6,200 souls, this ability is not a cheap pickup, but it will send you flying in literally any direction you would like. The initial burst of movement that occurs once activated makes it a surprisingly viable engagement tool, and hitting Bebops, 7s, or Vindictas out of the air has never been easier. Casting Magic Carpet grants you a respectable 800 HP in temporary shields, which means using it as your Goo Ball engage will make you even tankier than before. With good use cases outside of Goo Ball and Ethereal Shift no longer demanding one of your 4 flex slots, there is a legitimate case to be made for picking this one up. Alright Goo Crew, I promised early in the video that I would give you a tip that would keep you from pulling your hair out of your head, so listen up. For some strange reason, jumping in Goo Ball is treated differently than jumping normally. Normally, if I walked off this building, I could use my double jump while free falling, but in Goo Ball form, that is not the case. Now, you may be wondering, who cares? Goo cares, that's who. This actually has some absurd implications on the use of active items, and this drove me crazy for hours of gameplay until I finally figured it out. See, if you do not jump before using any active that sends you into the air, you will not be able to use your double jump after the use of your active item. Imagine Phantom Striking onto a Vindicta in the air, only to be unable to double jump and land the collision. Or, in the case of Majestic Leap, what if you were hoping to get extra distance using the Majestic Leap wave tech, but Deadlock won't let you double jump in the air? Before I understood what was causing this, I missed out on many collisions when using Phantom Strike, Warpstone, and even Majestic Leap. And while this concept is still a bit clunky, knowing how to get around it makes all the difference. Let's take a look at a clip that puts many of these skills to use. This fight is taking place during the laning phase, and I do not yet have Goo Ball at max level. Because of this, it's going to be best that I try and cooldown dump before I get into my ultimate. We throw down Puddle Punch and Splatter onto the enemy McGinnis, and we know that our lane partner is skirmishing against a Mirage on the side. We see that the Mirage is lower HP, and that our lane partner is currently focus firing them, so we decide to focus on the Mirage first. I am holding down Accelerate as I chase down the Mirage, and immediately after I find the collision, I let off of Accelerate to allow me to make more accurate movement inputs. And as is the case in almost every Goo Ball fight scenario, we go straight to looking for geometry to rebound off of. There are 4 viable options on screen now because only geometry nearby and in front of us is worth considering. We also know that the McGinnis we poked at earlier is just off screen to our left. Option 1 is solid. It cuts off the path for the McGinnis to get back to the tower, and it will bounce us in a way that it will allow us to continue to puppy guard their exit route. Option 2 is tough. Even with acceleration not being used, it would take a lot of turning to hit the wall at an angle that puts us back into the fight, and the wall is naturally going to bounce us in a direction that will make it more difficult to guard our opponent's escape route. Option 3 is viable, but it will also bounce us away from the direction the Mirage and McGinnis may want to escape from. Ultimately, I decide to bounce off option 4, which will rebound me across the entire exit path that the enemy can consider taking. Notice that as I am about to hit the wall, I turn my camera 180 degrees to get more information on the enemy positioning. I may have used acceleration slightly to get to the rebound wall faster, but as I am rebounding, I am certainly not holding acceleration so that I can continue to make minute changes to my direction. I am holding S while facing backwards, and I will be ready to hold W again after the rebound. Also notice that I am prepared to cover any exit path that the enemy may choose to take. I accelerate to the Mirage and I find the elimination, and once again I immediately let off of accelerate to make small movement adjustments and find another collision. I hit both McGinnis and the flat surface of the barrels, which is going to give me a very predictable rebound path. I am very comfortable with using goo ball in these middle laning areas, so I do not need to turn my camera around to find the next rebound wall. It is fine if you do need to do so, but in this case I am able to keep my attention on my opponent while I path backwards to the geometry that is going to send me back in the enemy direction. After the second collision on the Guinness, I am able to make use of the same barrels from before to look for an additional hit. Notice that after this rebound, I accidentally hit another wall. This easily can be a situation where you will find yourself spiraling out of control if you're not careful with your acceleration use. I am not using acceleration here so that I am able to make small adjustments, and hitting this wall does not throw me that far off course, and I'm still able to find the elimination. Here is the full clip back without me yapping over it.
Ready?
I'm ulting Mirage.
No, wait, why am I taking damage over time? I'm not, I'm getting shot by minions.
I think I get the kill here. He's one. Stunned Guinness at all.
For the sake of video duration, I will leave it at just that clip for now, but you can imagine how high the skill ceiling of these plays becomes when you begin to incorporate the various active items we discussed previously. So what do you think? I would love to hear your favorite goo ball movement tips in the comments below. If this video was helpful, I hope you will evaluate the pros and cons of subscribing, and in any case, I hope to see you in the next one.